This is a Fox News alert. President Trump welcomed Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to the White House just moments ago before taking a trip to Pennsylvania to sell tax reform later today. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and this is the Daily Briefing. President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau are meeting right now, and we expect NAFTA negotiations to be a big part of their agenda. Meantime, Fox News has learned that White House Deputy Chief of Staff Kirstjen Nielsen will be nominated by President Trump to be the new Homeland Security Secretary. That post has been empty for a couple of months as John Kelly became the White House Chief of Staff. Let's go to our chief White House correspondent, John Roberts, with the latest. John, never a dull moment there.
Oh, are you kidding? It's the White House. Come on. It's like riding the front seat of the Superman roller coaster at Six Flags every single day. Yeah, Kirstjen Nielsen is going to be the president's pick for DHS secretary to replace John Kelly, the man that Kirstjen Nielsen has worked for since the beginning of this administration. She was the chief of staff over at the Department of Homeland Security. John Kelly liked her so much that he brought her over to the White House when he became the chief of staff to have her as his deputy. And she really has a reputation here at the White House of being a real tough cookie. If John Kelly was the gatekeeper for the Oval Office, Kirstjen Nielsen was the gatekeeper to the Chief of Staff's office. It will also mark the first time, should she be confirmed by the Senate, which is pretty likely. I think that a lot of senators like her as well. She will be the first former staffer at the Department of Homeland Security to be elevated, Dana, to be the secretary there. So big news today for Kirstjen Nielsen. This
Indeed.
is a huge career leap for her.
Absolutely. In fact, I worked with her in the Bush White House, and she was super talented and multitasker, and she can certainly manage, absolutely. And then the president has more to come today. He's going to go to Pennsylvania. He's going to be giving what I think is a very interesting speech to a targeted group of people on his tax reform bill.
Yeah, the president continuing to sell tax reform. He wants to make it very difficult for members of Congress who might be thinking about voting against tax reform to do it. So he's going into Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is a solidly Republican area, a state where there is a Democratic senator up for re-election, though it does look like it's probably a pretty safe seat for the Democrats in terms of the senatorial election. But there are some Democrats who are a little worried about this elimination of the state and local tax deduction. So the president is going to do whatever he can to try to convince them to vote for his tax reform plan. He'll have a group of truckers and trucking companies with him. The president really targeting middle-class folks, what he calls the forgotten Americans, really focusing in on what the tax plan will do for them. And for the very first time today, equating what repatriating corporate funds currently held overseas will mean for the average American taxpayer. The president will say in his speech that, quote, we will impose a one-time low tax on money currently parked overseas so that it can be brought back home to America where it belongs. My Council of Economic Advisors estimates that this change, along with a lower rate, would likely give the typical American household a $4,000 pay raise. And you know how important messaging is with all of this. The president's going to be going to a conservative organization next week to sell them on the finer, deeper details of the policy. He'll probably be going to states like California, where the Democrats are trying to flip a lot of Republican seats, a high-tax state where this idea of eliminating the state and local tax deduction is a big idea to sell tax reform there. He'll go to Montana, where John Tester, a Democrat, is in a close race for re-election next year, and a lot of farmers there who would benefit from the elimination of the estate tax, probably go to New York, maybe Connecticut as well. He just wants to get as many of these lawmakers on board as possible and put as much pressure on them as he can with this messaging on tax reform, David.
I love to watch the strategic communications plan come together no matter who's doing it. So thanks so much for that report, John. Appreciate it.
You bet. Good to see you.
All right, as we mentioned, President Trump is meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau, and it comes as the next round of NAFTA talks are set to begin, and the administration's strategy appears to focus on watering down the pact and reducing its influence on American companies. Joining me now is North Carolina Congressman Mark Maddow, chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. Your first time on the Daily Briefing, and we hope to have you more often. Appreciate you being here today.
It's great to be with you, Dana, and certainly congratulations on the new show. We look forward to being with you on a regular basis.
Well, you're certainly at the center of all these topics, so I want to get to a few of them. Let's start with NAFTA. Do you like the proposal that President Trump is putting forward to the Prime Minister today? Have you been briefed on it?
Well, we've had ongoing discussions on trade, specifically on NAFTA. As you know, it's part of a four-part scenario where we're negotiating not only on small and medium-sized businesses, but on large businesses as well. And so this is really all about creating incentives to make sure that we don't lose American jobs. I think that was the one knock for NAFTA when it passed. And as part of the president's America First agenda, he's been laser focused on that. And so we're very optimistic that the discussions that are going on now with the Prime Minister and other stakeholders will produce not only a good deal, but a deal that essentially makes sure that American job creators are not at a disadvantage. And so I'm optimistic that we'll see some modifications instead of a full scrapping of the NAFTA deal that would be really something that could be applauded by all countries.
One of the things that people who are concerned about the deal say is that there's this idea of a 5-year sunset, that every 5 years the countries would have to say that they want to keep it going, maybe a chance to renegotiate again at all of those points. And yet businesses are saying, but we make investment decisions on 10 to 20 year on a 10 to 20 year basis. So, for example, if North Carolina is trying to get a new manufacturing facility to base there, that's not something they would do on a 5-year basis. So, do you think there's room for some negotiation there?
Well, I think there is, and I think you're right. Businesses make long-term decisions that are much greater than 5 years. Long-term, as you know, here in Washington, D.C., is 6 months. But long-term for a business is much longer than that. So as we look at our tax reform side of things, along with the trade, hopefully we'll fit those hand in glove. We'll be able to negotiate something to give businesses some certainty, whether it's on manufacturing or international trade. But certainly as we look to invest in the American jobs, it's really the ambiguity that has been the toughest thing that we've had to deal with. So I think that we'll get some real specifics there that ultimately will not provide for a sunset each and every 5-year period.
Let me ask you, you brought up tax reform. So the president's going to be giving this big speech tonight in Pennsylvania.
Right.
I think it's interesting to specifically talk to truckers and especially about that pass-through tax and how his plan would support, basically give them, as John Roberts reported, $4,000 more a year in their paycheck. I mean, everybody would want that. But it's interesting because Senator McConnell earlier today and President Trump echoing the belief that Democrats are trying to sabotage this, but even the Koch brothers today saying that the realtors are in fact among those who are jeopardizing tax reform because of special interests and corporate welfare, as they call it. Well, how do you see all of these fights ginning up and basically trying to gum up the works before you can get started?
Well, I've had probably 4 tax reform meetings in my office this morning before coming on. And so, yes, it is. The special interest groups are out there trying to make sure that their interests are represented. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to have to be a give and take. But that give and take for me is all about making sure that we give to the American taxpayer and take away from special interests. And so the president is really not only focused on that, but he gets tax reform. So he's going straight to the voters there in Pennsylvania to make the case, even with the real estate folks. I have a real estate background. I was in real estate and a developer. The proposals that I'm seeing right now are really nothing that they should be alarmed about. But it comes back to fundamentally what we have to do is not only simplify, but cut the taxes so that we can ultimately put people back to work and make sure that we grow our economy.
Before I let you go, you had a little bit of you made a little bit of news yesterday when you were talking about Senator Bob Corker, who of course has had this ongoing feud with President Trump. But you think that story was a little bit overwritten. Let me ask you, do you think that when it comes to a final tax reform vote, if we get to have one in the Senate, that Bob Corker will actually vote for it?
Well, I think we will. As you know, he's a deficit hawk. He's a thinking individual, and the senator and I have had discussions on tax reform already. And at the end of the day, he just wants to make sure that we deal with the deficit. And as long as we do that, I do believe that he will be a yes vote in the end. We've got to make sure that we build a broad coalition. Jim Jordan and I are actually reaching out to Democrats to say, where is some common ground that we can come together so that we can truly make this a bipartisan bill. And so I'm very optimistic that we'll get it across the finish line and to the president's desk.
And he might be the least of your problems as you work on all of this.
Exactly.
All right. Congressman Mark Meadows, thank you for being here, and we hope to have you back soon.
Thank you, Dana.
All right. Thank you so much. Nearly 20 women now accusing movie mogul Harvey Weinstein of sexual misconduct, including two of Hollywood's biggest stars, Oscar winners Gwyneth Paltrow and Angelina Jolie. And now Weinstein has fled the country and his wife has left him. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt is live in Las Vegas with the latest. Jonathan.
Hey, Dana, on top of all that, heavyweights of the political world now weighing in too. President Obama speaking out against Harvey Weinstein. Mr. Obama, like Hillary Clinton, had been under a lot of pressure to condemn the movie mogul, who was also a major donor to Democrats. And hours after Mrs. Clinton said she was appalled by Mr. Weinstein's behavior, President and Mrs. Obama followed, saying they are disgusted and adding, quote, "Any man who demeans and degrades women in such fashion needs to be condemned and held accountable, regardless of wealth and status." Weinstein is rapidly running out of friends. A who's who of Hollywood that once revered or feared him is now condemning him, as superstars Gwyneth Paltrow and Angelina Jolie say they were both victims of Weinstein's predatory ways. And Weinstein's wife of 10 years has released a statement saying, quote, "My heart breaks for all the women who have suffered tremendous pain because of these unforgivable actions. I have chosen to leave my husband. Caring for my young children is my first priority, and I ask the media for privacy at this time." And now the reporter who investigated allegations of rape by Harvey Weinstein and published them in The New Yorker is questioning why the NBC network, for whom he also works, apparently spiked a potential TV expose of Weinstein. Listen.
NBC says that, the story wasn't publishable, that it wasn't ready to go by the time that you brought it to them. But obviously it's ready to go by the time you got it into The New Yorker.
I walked into the door at The New Yorker with an explosively reportable piece that should have been public earlier, and immediately, obviously, The New Yorker recognized that, and it is not accurate to say that it was not reportable. In fact, there were multiple determinations that it was reportable at NBC.
And Dana, in the last few minutes, another actress, Cara Delevingne, has just posted on Instagram details of what she says was abuse and harassment by Harvey Weinstein. So the actresses keep coming forward, Dana.
Wow, Jonathan, thank you so much. We'll keep following that story. And that's fascinating about Ronan Farrow as well. All right, there is new audio of one of the first calls made on the Las Vegas shooter.
Someone's firing a gun up here. Someone's firing a rifle on the 32nd floor down the hallway.
So who made that call and how it's changing the investigation? Plus, Mitch McConnell and Bob Corker at the center of outside efforts to take down the GOP establishment. Former White House Chief of Staff Karl Rove joins me, but first, Sarah Sanders from yesterday's press briefing.
Senator Corker is certainly entitled to his own opinion, but he's not entitled to his own facts. The fact is, this president has been an incredibly strong leader on foreign policy and national security.
President Trump meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau right now. Let's listen in.
President Trump, would you like to see NAFTA continue, or would you rather have a unilateral trade deal with Canada?
Thank you all very much. I very much appreciate. We're here with a man who has become a friend of mine, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and Mrs. Trudeau. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And we are discussing many things, including NAFTA, but we have discussions scheduled for quite a few subjects. And I think we both look very much forward. And I want to just tell you, Justin, great honor to have you both with us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to be back here in the Oval Office. As the President said, a lot of things to discuss. We have an incredibly close relationship at two countries that are interwoven in our economies, in our cultures, in our peoples. But we have a good partnership, and there's always ways to improve it, always issues we need to talk through, and that's why having an ongoing constructive relationship between the President and the Prime Minister is really important, and I'm glad to be able to meet with you here again today. Merci beaucoup.
L'ambiance est bonne, M. Boudou?
Toujours bien de se rencontrer avec des alliés et des amis.
Mr. President, is NAFTA dead?
We'll see what happens. We have a tough negotiation, and it's something that you will know in the not-too-distant future. But we are going to be discussing NAFTA, and we'll be discussing defense. because we have a great, I mean, these are truly great and original allies, and mutual defense is very important. And I guess we'll also be discussing mutual offense, which people don't mention too often, but offense is part of defense. So we have many things to talk about, but NAFTA will certainly be a big factor today. Okay?
Do you want to increase the nuclear arsenal?
No, I never discussed increasing it. I want it in perfect shape. That was just fake news by NBC, which gives a lot of fake news lately. No, I never discussed. I think somebody said I want 10 times the nuclear weapons that we have right now. Right now we have so many nuclear weapons. I want them in perfect condition, perfect shape. That's the only thing I've ever discussed. General Mattis put out a statement, or is putting out a statement, saying that that was fake news, that it was just mentioned that way. And it's frankly disgusting the way the press is able to write whatever they want to write. And people should look into it. No, I want to have absolutely perfectly maintained, which we are in the process of doing, nuclear force. But when they said I want 10 times what we have right now, it's totally unnecessary, believe me, because I know what we have right now.
You want no increase whatsoever? You're happy with it?
We won't need an increase, but I want modernization and I want total rehabilitation. It's got to be in tip-top shape.
Mr. Trump, you said that NAFTA just needed some little tweaks. What changed?
Well, I don't think anything changed. We're negotiating a NAFTA deal. It's time after all of these years, and we'll see what happens. It's possible we won't be able to make a deal, and it's possible that we will. We have a great personal relationship, and we have a relationship now as two countries, I think that's as close as ever. But we'll see if we can do the kind of changes that we need. We have to protect our workers, and in all fairness, the Prime Minister wants to protect Canada and his people also. So we'll see what happens with NAFTA. But I've been opposed to NAFTA for a long time in terms of the fairness of NAFTA. I said we'll renegotiate. And, I mean, I think Justin understands this. If we can't make a deal, it'll be terminated, and that'll be fun. They're going to do well, we're going to do well. But maybe that won't be necessary. But it has to be fair to both countries.
Mr. President, do you think there should be limits on what the press should write?
No, the press should speak more honestly. I mean, I've seen tremendously dishonest press. It's not even a question of distortion, like the question that was just asked before about 10 times the nuclear capability. I know the capability that we have, believe me, and it is awesome. It is massive. And so when they make up stories like that, that's just made up. And the generals will tell you that. And then they have their sources that don't exist. In my opinion, they don't exist. They make up the sources. There are no sources. Any other question?
What do you decide? What do you decide what happens to NAFTA?
We'll decide over the next fairly short period of time, but I think it's going to work out very well for both countries and Mexico.
What's your thinking on the Iran deal?
You're going to see very soon. We're going to be announcing that very shortly.
If you can't make a deal with Mexico, would you still want free trade with Canada?
What?
If you can't reach a deal with Mexico, could you envision still having free trade with Canada?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. It's possible we won't be able to reach a deal with one or the other. But in the meantime, we'll make a deal with one. But I think we have a chance to do something very creative that's good for Canada, Mexico, and the United States.
So do you want to see NAFTA survive?
How was your lunch with Secretary Tillerson?
Very good. You mean last week? John, you're so far behind the times. You mean today or last week? Because today I didn't have lunch with. No, I had a lunch last week, and we had a very good lunch. We have a very good relationship. The press really doesn't understand that, but that's okay. We actually have a very good relationship. What else? I think I have a little bit different attitude on North Korea than other people might have. And I listen to everybody, but ultimately, my attitude is the one that matters, isn't it? That's the way it works. That's the way the system is. But I think I might have a somewhat different attitude and a different way than other people. I think perhaps I feel stronger and tougher on that subject than other people. But I listen to everybody, and ultimately, I will do what's right for the United States and really what's right for the world, because that's really a world problem. That's beyond just the United States. That's a world problem, and it's a problem that has to be solved. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
both countries individually?
Well, the press certainly are not short of questions, but the president was in a giving mood, just talking about a range of things from NAFTA, to the story from NBC News today about his thoughts on nuclear weapons, and then, of course, talking a little bit about upcoming plans to announce something on Iran, which we should have soon. Joining me now is Karl Rove, former senior advisor and deputy chief of staff to President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. First time on the Daily Briefing.
God, I can't believe it. I've made it. I've made it.
Remember, I used to ask you to come to the Daily Briefing all the time because the press loved you. What do you think about the president's comments just now on NAFTA? Because he seemed to be giving himself a lot of room to make a deal that he thinks is fair, but he's trying to say, well, maybe we won't, but maybe we will. It's just the art of the deal.
Yeah, it is the art of the deal. Remember, he was sitting there with Canada. We have a deficit with Canada on goods, but we have a surplus with Canada on services. So we buy more things from them than they buy from us, but we sell them more services like insurance and financial services and so forth. So actually, with Canada, we have a modest trade surplus overall. Mexico, we have a deficit on both goods and services. So it's sort of hard. How do you fix this whole thing? If your goal is fairness, you can fix it. If your goal is you got to buy more from us than we buy from you, then it gets to be really difficult.
How much concern are you hearing from the business community about this possible change?
A lot, and not only from the business community. Remember the agriculture community. We sell a lot of protein to Mexico in the form of corn and wheat and beef, and there's a real concern in rural America about how this could, if NAFTA goes away, then rural America loses one of its most important and growing markets. Mexico is growing dramatically, and their need for protein, American-grown protein, is growing dramatically as well.
Let me turn to another topic that we wanted to talk about today, and since we still have you and your captive audience, I'll keep you. Steve Bannon, who left the White House, he has this plan that he wants to target incumbent Republicans, and he wants mostly to get rid of Senator Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, and the filibuster. Those are the two things he says he wants to do. What do you make of this?
I think it's sort of insane. I mean, there are only 8 Republican senators up this year. If he got all 8 of them elected as pro-Bannon, get rid of McConnell people, there still wouldn't be enough votes. And look at the candidates he's coming up with. First guy picks for the United States House of Representatives, former Congressman Grimm from Staten Island, who just got out of the federal pen for tax evasion. He's recruiting a guy to run in Wyoming who lives in Middleburg, Virginia, and Abu Dhabi, whose company is headquartered in Abu Dhabi, underwritten by a Chinese state-run company or state-associated company that provides security services to Chinese energy developments in Africa. He's got a guy.
And that senator from Wyoming, Senator Barrasso, he has voted with the president 96% of the time.
Right, and so one of the leaders in attempting to get Obamacare repealed and replaced. In Nevada, he has a guy who has run 5 times for office, lost a race for state senator, lost a race for Secretary of State, lost a race for the U.S. Senate, and lost 2 races for the U.S. House of Representatives. And hopefully the 6th time, I guess Bannon thinks that's going to be successful.
Well, let's listen to Newt Gingrich, who he talked about this with Sean Hannity yesterday. Let's play that.
The fact is, you'd have such a big Republican majority, you'd pass the stuff you guys want to pass. Creating a civil war inside the Republican Party may feel good, but I think as a strategy, it is stunningly stupid.
Those are pretty strong words from Newt Gingrich. But is Mitch McConnell a drag on the Republican Party at this time, with his unpopularity?
Well, I think it's a minor drag. The bigger drag is the Republicans have got to get things done. I mean, I think grassroots Republicans are upset that the House was able to pass repeal and replace Obamacare, but the Senate came up short. And came up short not once but twice. So they better get it right on tax reform and get a bill done. House is going to be able to do it. The question now is, are we going to hold enough votes in the Senate? As you know, 52-48 is a very slim margin. There is a huge difference between having 52 members of your own party and having 53, 54, 55.
And what Mark Meadows and I were just talking about is that when it comes to tax reform in the Senate, Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, who has announced his retirement, he might be the least of their problems.
Right.
When it comes, because I think he'll vote for it.
Yeah, I think he will end up voting for it. Rand Paul is going to be a problem, and there are going to be some others. And the administration's got a tough road on any tax reform bill because somebody's going to get gouged. There's no perfect tax bill that only cuts some people's taxes and doesn't put other people in a bad situation.
Do you like it that the president's going to talk to truckers tonight as a strategy?
I sure do.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
All
Absolutely.
right. Karl Rove, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I feel, I've made it in life.
Like you're home?
Yeah, I feel at home.
I love that. All right, as we await President Trump's decision on the Iran nuclear deal, he's slamming a report from NBC, claiming that he called for a massive increase in the U.S. nuclear arsenal. You just heard him talking about that. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin has the latest from the Pentagon. Jennifer, what has been the reaction to this NBC report that the president supposedly wanted to increase the size of the nuclear arsenal by 10,000 weapons?
Well, by tenfold, in fact, was the report. Dana, you saw the reaction from the White House. The president himself called it fake news in a tweet this morning, and just now he called it a disgusting report. He said that Defense Secretary Mattis had put out a statement calling it fake news. We've been asking the Pentagon for that statement. We haven't received it yet. We have, however, reached out to other members of the president's national security team who were present during that July 20th meeting, where he reportedly made the comments, and so far none have confirmed the report or the account. The president was reportedly reacting to this briefing slide, which showed how the size of the U.S. nuclear arsenal had fallen from about 36,000 nukes in the 1960s to about 4,000 today. His national security advisors reportedly had to explain the reason for the reduction in nuclear weapons, arms control treaties that were signed before and after the Cold War that also limited the size of Russia's nuclear stockpile. The Pentagon is reviewing its nuclear posture and the need to modernize existing stockpiles. That review has been underway for some time and is due later this year. During the election campaign, you'll remember, then candidate Trump did not know what the nuclear triad was, which led to some raised eyebrows, Dana.
So I have to say that if those were the questions that he asked in the briefing, I think those are totally legitimate questions, and I think that any president would have asked them. This is a question I like to ask. What should we be paying attention to that we aren't? We all know the news of the day, but what are you paying attention to that we aren't?
Well, one story that we are focusing on that may not be getting attention involves the State Department's decision yesterday to place a bounty on the heads of two leaders of the Iranian-backed Hezbollah group, the Shiite militant group based in Lebanon. The U.S. government is offering $7 million for information that leads to the capture of Talal Hamia, the leader of Hezbollah's international branch, and $5 million for Fuad Shukr, a general in South Lebanon who oversees operations in Syria. U.S. officials say they believe Hezbollah is plotting attacks on U.S. soil, though they have provided little evidence. It's the first time in a decade the U.S. government has placed sanctions on Hezbollah, Dana.
All right, Jen Griffin, thank you so much from the Pentagon. And we will be talking to former Green Beret Commander Michael Waltz about this, plus brand new audio of the first moments of the Las Vegas shooting. And it comes amid new questions about the revised police timeline of what happened and when. We're live with it from Jennifer Griffin on the new threats from the terror group Hezbollah. That group reportedly plotting terror attacks targeting Americans as the Pentagon offers rewards for two top Hezbollah leaders. Let's bring in Michael Waltz. He's a former Green Beret commander and a Fox News contributor. You brought this to my attention this morning. You said this needs to be talked about. This is a big deal for the United States to put out the request that these are the two most wanted in the world. So what kind of life are they living now? Are they on the run?
Well, you know, one thing to remind folks about Hezbollah is that they are completely 100% bought and owned and controlled by Iran and by the Iranian regime and act as their surrogate all over the world. They're part terrorist group, they're part mafia, they're part political party in Lebanon, and they have their hands in everything from drug cartels in Latin America to counterfeiting in North Africa to money laundering in Europe. Really, you name it. These two individuals, one in particular is an advisor to the head of Hezbollah and was responsible for the Beirut bombing. If you remember the Marine Corps barracks bombing in 1983. I am thrilled to see the administration aggressively going after these guys because it was something that the Obama administration really ignored. It ignored a lot of their nefarious activity all over the world and what they were doing across the Middle East because they wanted the Iran deal to go through, and they kind of didn't want to muddy the waters by aggressively going after these Iranian surrogates, which is what Hezbollah is. Do you think that the NCTC, the National Counterterrorism Center, has some sort of actionable intelligence, which is why they took this step? They do. So actually, in addition to this bounty, this reward by the National Counterterrorism Center, we also had an indictment by the Southern District of New York of two operatives on American soil scouting dams and scouting some other critical infrastructure because the Iranian regime plans to launch terrorist attacks across the United States as part of its broader strategy if hostilities break out between the U.S. and Iran. Something we really have to, I'm thrilled that you're focused on it.
Michael, is there, is one of the things that President Trump is thinking about as he decides what to do with the Iran deal, and he says we're going to hear about that soon, possibly tomorrow or Friday, is this on his mind? Is this what he's thinking about when he's talking about Iran not living up to its obligations?
Well, that's right. He's talking about when he says Iran's not living up to the spirit of the deal, what he's saying is Iran is not taking any steps that we can see to be a responsible actor on the world stage, and certainly not in the Middle East. Between its development of a ballistic missile system, which, by the way, it's getting the technology from North Korea and sharing its nuclear technology as well, support to terrorist regimes from Syria to Yemen to Lebanon, and then its cyber attacks, a number of which we have found evidence of here in the United States against both our banking system and, again, against critical infrastructure like nuclear sites, energy sites, and dams.
Based on your experience, who's likely to come across these two? Who would capture them?
Well, we of course will work with our Israeli allies and the Mossad, who tracks these guys very closely. We work with European intelligence agencies because Hezbollah has a footprint all over Europe, and even they have a footprint in South America. We can work with some of our partners down there.
All right, Michael Waltz, thank you so much for being here and bringing us that story.
All right. Thanks, Dana.
A Fox News alert as we face new audio services from the first moments of the Las Vegas massacre. A maintenance worker calling hotel dispatchers, telling them to call police after Stephen Paddock shot and wounded a security guard through the door of his hotel suite. Listen.
Call the police. Someone's firing a gun up here. Someone's firing a rifle on the 32nd floor down the hallway.
Security wants to know if you know a room.
It's at the end of the hallway. I can't tell you what room. He looked like he fired down the hallway when I got close to the door.
Dan Springer is live from Las Vegas with more. Dan, it's interesting because we keep getting more information and the information keeps changing.
Yeah, and how calm he was in that clip. It was amazing. The audio clip was released today by MGM Resorts. That's the parent company of Mandalay Bay. And on it, we hear from Stephen Schuck. He's the building engineer who we now know was on that 32nd floor checking out reports of an exit door that would not open. And he calmly alerts his security people when the shots start to be fired. Here, listen.
Call the police. Someone's firing a gun up here. Someone's firing a rifle on the 32nd floor down the hallway. Copy. Hey, it's on 32. Stephen Galloway.
Security speak. East to 106 Stephen. Security wants to know if you know a room.
It's at the end of the hallway. I can't tell you what room. He looked like he fired down the hallway when I got close to the door.
Copy. So it's down to 100 the hallway, correct?
Security's up here. You know where you at? 100 hallway. Don't go.
Absolutely chilling. Also today, we have video of a news conference that was shot just a little while ago. The first lawsuit following the tragedy was filed on Monday. It names MGM Resorts, Live Nation Entertainment, the concert organizer, and Slide Fire Solutions, a bump stock maker. It's filed on behalf of 21-year-old Paige Gasper. She's a college student from California who is home recovering from a single gunshot that shattered her ribs and tore through her liver. The lawsuit alleges gross negligence on the part of the hotel for not properly monitoring guests as they come and go and also not responding quickly enough to the gunfire. Dana?
All right, Dan, still a lot more to learn, and thank you for being there and bringing this story to us. A news conference underway right now on the deadly California wildfires. This is amazing. 22 large fires are currently raging out west, and there are 18 confirmed deaths and reports of more than 500 people missing. The fires reducing 3,500 homes and businesses to rubble, charring trees and scorching the earth. Claudia Cowan is live from Santa Rosa, California, with more. Claudia.
Well, hi, Dana. You see block after block in neighborhoods like this one. You know the damage and loss of life will be extensive. We are in the Coffee Park subdivision of Santa Rosa, one of the hardest hit areas. Frankly, it looks like a bomb went off, and people are now returning to sift through the rubble and see if they can salvage anything. Many escaped in the nick of time when the fire roared through here late Sunday night. And while it's considerably cooler today, winds are starting to pick up. Gusts overnight sent embers flying in all directions, sparking new fires and new evacuations in Napa, Solano, and Sonoma counties. Several thousand people are still out of their homes, and local officials are asking for patience while fire and utility crews go through all the burned out areas to make sure they're safe for people to return. The wildfires tearing through Northern California continue to expand unabated. There are 4 burning in Napa County alone. Major fires are now spread over a 200-square-mile region, and not one has been contained. 18 people have died, including 69-year-old Linda Tunis, who used a wheelchair and lived in a mobile home here in Sonoma County. She was on the phone with her daughter Sunday night and cried out, "I'm going to die," before the phone went dead. Hundreds of others are reported as missing. Thousands of firefighters from across the state are now working to build containment lines. They are also fighting the flames from the air, hoping to make some progress before the winds return tonight and tomorrow. And we have another red flag warning set to take effect later this afternoon. Dana, firefighters say their #1 priority is still saving lives. Yeah. Their second priority is saving property as this very active firefight here moves into a 3rd straight day.
All right, Claudia Callan, thank you so much. We'll be coming back to you as we develop that story develops. And in fact, while she was speaking, there was a press conference in the area and is now confirmed that 21 people have lost their lives in those fires. Moving on, as more accusations surface against Harvey Weinstein, his wife is now speaking out, saying that she's leaving him. But why did it take so long for Hillary Clinton and President Obama to break their silence? Plus, a couple of service dogs are getting a very special honor.
Shepard Smith on the Fox News deck. President Trump denies a report that he wanted to dramatically increase the U.S. nuclear stockpile, but saying he wants to make sure our arsenal is in the best shape. The president also saying the U.S. has to be tough on North Korea. That's after a top North Korean official accused President Trump of lighting the fuse of war. We'll get into that with a former senior political analyst on Korea issues for the CIA. All that and attacking the licenses of television networks. They're not licensed. We'll have more. Top of the hour on Shepard Smith Reporting. We'll see you then.
After appearing on our show yesterday, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice spoke to an overflow crowd at the George W. Bush Presidential Center in Dallas. I was honored to be there moderating the event. Secretary Rice talked about the worldwide fight for democracy and civil rights and why America is not only a global leader, but still a work in progress.
We're still waking up. The civil rights movement, I think, was a second democratic transition. So if you read the tremendous words of the Declaration of Independence and of the Constitution about equality, obviously America was born with a birth defect, which was slavery. The reason that America is such a beacon for the world is not because it's perfect. It's because it's imperfect and keeps working at its imperfections.
Inspiring words from the former Secretary of State. That full video is on the George W. Bush Center Facebook page. Condi also got me to do something I'd never done before, which is call her Condi. I had always called her Secretary of State or Secretary Rice, her duly earned a title, but she told me I was going to have to get over it, so I got the words out. I said Condi. All right, the Harvey Weinstein scandal. We said we're going to talk about this, raising questions about the left and why some top Democrats were slow to condemn his behavior. Geraldo was on Hannity last night. He's blaming politics.
It is lamentable that a person who is a predator like this, Weinstein is a pig, but if he were a right-wing pig, they would have been all over this on Friday, not waiting until Tuesday.
Gianno Caldwell is the founder of Caldwell Strategic Consulting and a Fox News contributor, and Adrienne Elrod is a former communications director for Hillary Clinton. I think that there's some truth to that, but Adrienne, let me let you start first because obviously this is a horrific story for everybody, Republican or Democrat, but Democrats are certainly supported by Harvey Weinstein, been friends with him for a long time. And why were they so reluctant to either speak out more clearly and stand up for these women or to announce that they were going to give back his campaign contributions?
Well, look, Dana, first of all, congratulations on your new show.
Oh,
Very
thanks.
exciting.
I hope you'll be back often.
Of course. Thank you. Would love to. But look, a lot of Democrats have given back money to the Harvey Weinstein game to their campaigns, and they should. And a lot of Democrats have come out and condemned these actions. But look, Dana, I will make the following point, which is the more we politicize this, not just Harvey Weinstein, but other men in powerful positions who abuse their power to hurt women, the more we trivialize this and get away from the real core factor, which is we've got to do something in society. There's something wrong in society when this becomes okay. And in the case of Harvey Weinstein, it's incredibly disappointing and very disturbing that we're just now learning of these allegations, and that women are, for whatever reason, did not feel as empowered to speak, when these things happened years ago. And of course, that still happened more recently. So I think we've got to get away from the politicization of when powerful men like this abuse their power and focus more on trying to fix this pervasive problem on a national level.
I couldn't agree more. But Gianno, of course, when a Republican or a conservative is found to be in similar position, or maybe not even as egregious, liberals were not shy about going after them.
Actually, I do agree with Adrian and yourself, Dana, in terms of the politicalization of it. It shouldn't be a right-left issue. However, here in Hollywood, obviously, it's a very liberal city, and when people find out that I work for Fox News Channel, the first thing they mention is Bill O'Reilly. But over the last week, the weekend, this week, I haven't heard much of anything about Weinstein. And this is an individual out of a career that spans about 4 decades, have settled about 8 cases with women for sexually harassing them, with payments ranging from $80,000 to $150,000. We should have seen a very forceful statement from Hillary Clinton, a woman who's received thousands of dollars from this individual, a woman who says she embraced women's rights, a woman who has come down very hard on President Trump for some of his rhetoric, especially with the grab him by the P tape. So with that being the case, the left needs to really be what we would expect them to be if it was a Republican any standard. They should be just as outraged, and they should be speaking up in very emphatic terms.
Holman Jenkins this morning in the Wall Street Journal, in his column, he said that hypocrisy is the price we pay for civilization. Adrian, let me ask you, in the time remaining, which is only about 45 seconds, Chris Hayes tweeted this earlier today. He said, "Kind of wonder if Hollywood is staring down the beginning of a Catholic Church-style explosion of buried secrets, because even during this hour, Jonathan Hunt reported that another actress has come forward." Do you think there's more where this came from?
I think there probably is. And Jodi Kantor with the New York Times, who, of course, broke this piece and wrote a very investigative piece on this, she made it very clear that the New York Times is going to be looking into more men in Hollywood and in other industries who have created this sort of culture and environment that, for whatever reason, to them is acceptable. So I hope that we dig further into this and expose these men for the horrible behavior.
I do have one last question for you, Gianno, which is that as Adrian said, we hope that more women would feel empowered to come forward if they are ever exposed to this type of thing. But what about the men who knew about it and still didn't say anything either? I mean, don't they have a responsibility to speak up as well?
I think all are guilty in that way. And, Hollywood is a place where sex is very much promoted, not just in the films, but if you want to move up in this industry, it was told to me years ago, and it rings true today, that you may have to do some uncomfortable things sexually. Not me, myself, personally, but women are often in those environments and have those experiences, and this is obviously a major demonstration of it from a very powerful individual, or who used to be, rather, in Hollywood.
Right. Well, yes, he has fled the country, and his wife has left him. All right, Gianno and Adrian, I hope that we see you back here on the Daily Briefing. Thank you. The Boy Scouts of America making a big change. We're going to tell you who they will now allow in the club. Plus, a four-legged war hero about to get a very special honor. That positive news story next.